1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock the door. 5, 6, grab a crucifix. 7, 8, better stay up late. 9, 10, and never sleep again. So that's the nursery rhyme from A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I didn't even have to look that up. I still remembered it from back in the day. Hi, I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Now, if you go ahead and take a moment and like this video, it's just a like button below there. Today, we're going to talk about the new 4K UHD release of the original A Nightmare on Elm Street that introduced the world to not only Johnny Depp, it was his first film, and he gets the introducing credit in the beginning of it, but it also, the first time you see Freddy Kruger, Robert Englund plays him for the first time in this film, and he would go on to do it a lot more times. And it also introduced the protagonist Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp. This was a big deal back in the day. I remember when I was in school, it was probably middle school, late middle school, and everyone was into it. I don't know if everybody was, but the people, like a lot of the kids I was talking to, were into the film. And one kid even told me the whole plot, which I was captivated by. I was like, I gotta check this thing out. He had seen it on VHS, but I think the first time I saw it was probably on regular television with the commercials, and it was also edited. Some of the more violent parts were edited out, but it was probably right for the age I was at. That was the good thing about regular television, like back in the day, because you could watch a movie that was rated R, and it would probably only be rated PG-13 because they took out a lot of the things that would push it over the edge. Like, I guess a lot of times the profanity, or they throw a few F-bombs in there, suddenly it's rated R. But this one has some fairly extensive, not gratuitous, but pretty gross, gore scenes in it, and it's fairly frightening in general. And I remember one kid in school, I guess he was trying to scare me or something. I look over and he's sitting beside me, and he's like, "I'm going to get you when you least expect it." And he's trying to do a Freddy Krueger voice, and I guess maybe he was just trying to be Freddy Krueger. He may have been trying to intimidate me in some way. I don't know. I thought it was hilarious. I still think it's hilarious today. Now, this was previously released on Blu-ray. There's a collection of all 7 of the original movies. Now, there is a remake. It doesn't have the remake in it, and that's probably a good thing. But this one, the bad thing is, now the first film is on a disc by itself, but the rest of them are 2 and 3 are on the same disc, and 4 and 5 and so forth. But so only the first one has its own disc, and it's also, I guess it's good if you want to save space on your shelf, but it's not as good as having the individual, to me, it's not as good as having the individual covers and things to that nature, which we're going to talk more about this in the transfer compared to the Blu-ray later. I also have this set on DVD. Now, these do have their own separate cases, which is pretty cool, but they don't have, they got... Some of them have their own. Oh, yeah, they do. They got their own posters. Here's the original poster for A Nightmare on Elm Street, which I actually like this better than this right here. I wish they'd done something a little more with the cover. It's fairly simple. So Wes Craven directed the first Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, Wes Craven would go on to direct Scream and the first 3 sequels to it, Scream 1 through 4, and he directed a lot of other horror movies other than that, like The Hills Have Eyes and The Last House on the Left and so forth. And he does a very good job here as far as the direction. I really think it was all fairly impressive. Now, I'm going to be like that kid in school, and I'm going to go ahead and start telling you the plot of this thing. So it starts out not with Nancy. It starts off with Tina. That's her friend Tina, and she's having a nightmare, and she's running through this great dreamscape. And speaking of dreamscape, there is another film that came out the same year in 1984 that has somewhat of a similar plot. Now, I'm going to talk about this some more here in a little bit. But so Tina's running through this nightmare, and then she runs into Freddy Krueger, and he chases her, and she wakes up and looks down, and her shirt's been ripped, where his claw, he slashed her across the front. She's not hurt. Her shirt's ripped, though. And then she starts talking with her friend Nancy and her boyfriend, played by Johnny Depp. She's telling them kind of about it, and it turns out she eventually finds out that Nancy's also having very similar type of dreams, just they're not as prominent yet with her, because Freddy is kind of kind of really going after Tina at first. Not too long after that, they all go have a sleepover at Tina's house. Her parents are out of town, so it's the three of them. Plus, Tina has a guy she's seeing who's kind of like he's kind of like the bad boy type of like a biker type of character, but he's actually pretty nice, it turns out. But she's seeing this guy who seems like he could be a menace, and he comes over, and they go upstairs and they have sex and all that. But after that, she goes to sleep. And this time in her dream, Freddy Krueger actually is able to. She has the same sort of. Before I get into that, she goes into the back of the house, and Freddy Krueger comes up in this almost looks like an alley sort of situation, and his arms go out and they extend in a really almost cartoonish way. They extend out really far. It is cartoonish, but it's not like he becomes later on in some of the other films, like he becomes more of a cartoon. But here, it's still very scary and it's very intimidating. And then he starts running after her, really goofy, like he's not even trying to catch her. He's almost just trying to scare her, and so which I guess he is. And she runs off, and she gets inside. He eventually catches her, and then it cuts to inside of the room, and the boyfriend wakes up, and he pulls the covers off of her, and she's like going around the bed all unnatural, like in a way that couldn't be done just by herself, almost like a exorcist or sort of way. And then her shirt is suddenly like ripped, and she's slashed across her stomach and by 4 claw marks, and it just opens up, and all this blood comes out. And then she's pulled up the wall to the ceiling, and then she's on the ceiling bleeding to death, screaming. And then eventually Freddy, and by the way, you don't see Freddy at all, you just see her. And so you're seeing like the point of view of the boyfriend seeing what's happening, where Freddy's doing it, but he's not seeing because he's in the dream and she's in real life. And then he drops her on the bed, and then blood just splurts all over the place, and it's gruesome, very unsettling. And then the boyfriend runs out the window. He panics, runs out the window. Nancy and Johnny Depp's character come in the room, and the boyfriend is blamed for it, and he's on the run for a little bit. He eventually gets caught by the police and put in jail, and then Freddy kills him in jail. He hangs him like with his sheet. John Saxon is one of the main characters in this film. He's top billed, but he's not the main character. John Saxon, before this, he was known for Enter the Dragon, so he gets top billing, and he's Nancy's father, and he's also police detective. So he's investigating these murders as they start to happen. So he's involved with both the investigation and with Nancy, and he has a pretty decent amount of screen time. But really, the mother of Nancy's mother has more screen time than him. Now, the mother's played by Renee Blakely. Now, Renee Blakely was in Nashville, and she played the singer, one of the more famous singers in the, I think, Billie Jean or Norma Jean or something like that. But she's more known for Nashville, but she plays Nancy's mom here, and she does a fairly effective job. And she's also she drinks a lot. I guess she's an alcoholic, and she's often seen holding a bottle of liquor in her hand. She uses it almost as a crutch. You see her drinking some on screen, but most of the time she's just holding that bottle as a crutch. She gets called out on it by Nancy a few times. I guess I'm going to talk about one other death in the film that's and one shot before that. There's a scene in Nancy's in the bathtub, and then she falls asleep, and then the claw comes up between her legs, and that's kind of on the poster of some posters I've seen. And the claw comes up between her legs and then goes back down because the mom knocks on the door and kind of wakes her back up. They were able to accomplish that shot. They actually had a pool, like a diving pool, under the bed, and then someone was in there with a scuba tank underwater, and he would come up and do that shot. So that was pretty interesting the way that they got that shot. But then later on, Johnny Depp's character is helping her, and he's asleep on his bed, and he's trying to watch TV on the bed, and he's got earphones on, and he falls asleep, and then Freddy Krueger's hands come out and wrap around him and pull him into the bed, and all this blood just comes shooting out of the bed all over the ceiling. His mom comes in and sees it, and she don't even know what to think at first. She's like, "What am I seeing?" And then she starts screaming and runs. A fairly good reaction to that, the way that she does it, because they're like, what? You come in and you're like, what is going on here? It's like, it's so like over the top amount of blood that you don't even know what to think about it at first. And then you have to associate it like, well, my son's was in that bed. Yeah, so it's a great reaction from this actress in that shot. So we're going to talk about the ending, and I want to talk about some dream stuff here shortly. First, I want to go ahead and take a look at this new release. Now, like I said before, the cover's it's fine. You got a shot of Freddy Krueger on here, but I like the original cover better, and I think they could have done something cooler with this. There is a still book variant of this, and I think it's probably a little bit better on the way that it looks. And the inside has the same difference. And white here on the back of the insert. It's nothing too cool with that. And then you got a digital code, and you have the disc. Now the disc, all it is just red, and it's very similar to the red of the Blu-ray set that I was looking at earlier. So they're all just red discs. The packaging is somewhat underwhelming here. It's not awful, and I do like it that it has a slip cover. The transfer, on the other hand, is fairly impressive. Now, I like I say, I watched this last night, and then this morning I looked at the original one on Blu-ray. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I flipped through it, and I watched some scenes in different type of lighting. The 4K is definitely a bump in clarity. In general, it just looks a lot, and this happens with 4K typically, it looks a lot more clear. Now, one thing I noticed on the Blu-ray, there's a lot more grain. You can see a lot more film grain on the Blu-ray that you don't see on this 4K. So it kind of makes me think that they cleaned it up a little bit, and they probably did. I do think that maybe some of the detail isn't quite as much as it could be, but it still looks very good, and it looks fairly newer. It looks significantly newer here than it does on the Blu-ray. I noticed, like, I was looking at a scene outside on the Blu-ray where the kind of bad boy guy, he takes Nancy, she's outside and she's walking to school, and he takes her and he pulls her into the bushes, and he's trying to talk to her about that he's innocent, and then Nancy's dad shows up. I did notice there's some weirdness going on with his close-up in the Blu-ray, and it looks like there's something going on with that, and then she turns to run and runs into the bushes, and it looks fairly bad in the Blu-ray, but they cleaned it up pretty good in this one. I assume it happens a lot more as well. Now, a lot of this scene, especially the nightmare stuff, is all very darkly lit and I guess artistically kind of lit, and it all looks a lot better here in the 4K. Everything, the blacks look a lot deeper, and as you would expect with it. So I'd like, at first, when I first looked at the first few scenes of this in the Blu-ray, I was like, it's fairly similar. I definitely see more detail here in the 4K, but it's fairly similar to the Blu-ray. But then as it gets further into it, I do see a lot more, like a lot better looking stuff in the Blu-ray. So I'd recommend the 4K standalone to the Blu-ray. So Dreamscape, 1984. Now this is a similar concept where but it's different, of course. But they use this dream technology as almost like an espionage thing. So they have like Dennis Quaid. This has an awesome cast, like Dennis Quaid, Max von Sydow, Christopher Plummer, Kate Capshaw. But they're using, Dennis Quaid can go into people's dreams, and David Patrick Kelly plays kind of the bad guy who goes into the dreams. So Dennis Quaid's like the kind of good guy, and another guy. They have like several people who can go into dreams, and they try to send them in political situations. Now Christopher Plummer plays a kind of a villainous politician-like guy, and he's trying to use David Kelly's character to go into dreams. At one point, he actually has claws like Freddy Krueger. He wants him to go in and assassinate the president. And so this is more of an espionage thing where it's used in a different way, and it's cool though. This is good, but and if you like that type of espionage thriller with some science fiction, and the dream sequences in that look really cool, and there's a big snake monster at the end, but this kind of, it doesn't lean towards horror except for the snake, but this one leans a lot more towards horror, and it's both concepts are good. This one obviously won in the long run. It made more money and had a longer impression on people, and it made a franchise of a lot of other Nightmare on Elm Street films, and there may be some more in the future. Who knows? So a little bit about the special effects. Now these are no computer animation here, all prosthetics, all awesomeness. It's just, there's some cool stuff that happens, like Freddy. Like all this nightmare stuff. Like one time he's trying to scare somebody, and he just like pulls his whole face off, and you can see under his face. So there's a lot of stuff like that happens in the film. Now I want to talk a little bit about the ending. and what it means. I think the very end was kind of, they couldn't quite figure out how to end it, but it has a cool very end scene. But this film in general, eventually becomes harder to tell the difference between what is a dream and what is reality, and it seems to be bleeding into reality. Now, there's two possible things that are happening here. A, she's still in the dream. B, reality. I mean, the dreams are leaking into reality. So I guess that's never really defined in the first film. Now, Wes Craven directed this one and not the other ones. So the other ones do not follow suit with this idea. So if you think about this as a standalone, which is it's more like, I guess, more of a punching ending and more of and a lot of the things are left open to interpretation in this one compared to some of the other ones, which are fairly spelled out easier. And I'm going to get back to that in just a minute. I got an idea for that, but I do want to mention there's a scene where Nancy's mom takes her to a sleep lab and they put her to sleep, and she's talking with the doctor at the sleep lab, and she asks, "What are dreams?" And he replies, "We still don't know what they are or where they come from," which I guess is still kind of the case. We as people, we dream and we don't know exactly what they are. Now, there is a train of thought that thinks they are just our unconscious mind showing us stuff that we already know or have thought about. And maybe it's just showing us things that, there's lots of parts of our mind that we don't use, and maybe it's just showing us things. Some people think they might be subliminal messages, like say for instance in Dreamscape, or even in that new Nicolas Cage movie Dream Scenario. Maybe like you're able to, when other people are dreaming, you're able to somehow mix with their subconsciousness. And really, ultimately, we don't know what dreams are. I find them very fascinating myself, and we don't know what they are. We can have some ideas. Sometimes we learn things from dreams, and other times older memories we see, or people who are not even with us anymore will appear in a dream. Are dreams connected with a spirit realm of deceased people who can also interact? I don't know. Some interesting questions are put forward here in this film. Now, near the end of the film, and this is the part where it becomes, to me, it's like the part where it possibly becomes a dream and it's not reality anymore. So right before Johnny Depp's character is killed in the bed, she's like in her bed and he's in her bed, and he's supposed to be helping her stay awake. He's supposed to meet her, I think, at midnight or something. But she's trying to stay awake, and she looks like she nods off and then doesn't. I think maybe at that point, possibly the rest of the film might be a dream. And the reason I think this, during that scene, after that, in a part where it seems like she's still awake, the phone rings, and she picks it up, and it's like some crazy, like Freddy Kruger-y stuff on the phone. She takes the phone out of the wall, she rips it out of the wall, and then it rings again. She picks it up, and then suddenly Freddy's tongue is there and tries to like French kiss her, and then she drops the phone. So this is one of two things. This is either it's still in a dream, or the dream is leaking into the real world. So that is never answered. But a lot of weird things happen after that. A lot of things happen as well that don't seem like they're part of a dream as well. So I don't know if Freddy's essence is leaking into reality, or if we're still in a dream. And that's the question that's never really answered in the film for the rest of it. Anyway, and also at the very end of it, here's the big spoiler. So you think that she beat him, like she's able to bring him into the real world, and then, which doesn't actually, he ends up killing her mom, but then she her dad comes up into the room, sees the mom disappear into the bed, and then he like, this is the part that makes me think it might be a dream, because she tells him she'll meet him downstairs, and he walks away. I mean, no. I mean, why would he walk away at that point? His wife just disappeared in the bed. His daughter is like still like reeling from this trauma. I mean, no. But anyway, so that seems like a dream logic to me. But then Freddy Krueger appears. He comes after her. She tells him that he's not real, that she doesn't believe in him. And that's something too that's often explored here is Freddy Krueger seems to get his power from people believing in him, and also being scared of him. And it seems like the more scared they are, and the more people that he kills, the more powerful he gets, especially in the other films. But it is in this one as well. You do see it. It's like more of a, it's more implied. It's not as concrete of an evidence here for that thought, but it is there. And anyway, so then she tells him to screw off, and he disappears. And you think the movie's over, but then the next day she's going outside with her mom. Her mom's it's all like lit. There's some fog coming, and this is obviously a dream. And her mom's like, "Oh, I'm not going to drink anymore. Everything's perfect." And then she gets in the car. All her friends are still alive. Then the car is like a convertible. The car's top comes up. It's like a Freddy car. And then they all drive off, and then mom's screaming. And then Freddy's claw comes out of the window, grabs the mom, and then rips her into the house. Pretty awesome. Is that her mom's dream, or is it Nancy's dream? I don't know. Seems to be a little focused on the mom there, so it's kind of interesting. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, and it's never really explained in the other films because they just ignore it. So I'm going to go ahead and rate this film out of 5 stars. I'm going to give this 4.5 stars. It is an awesome, iconic horror movie that inspired lots of other ones. And Freddy Krueger is a badass character. I'm going to give The Transfer 4 stars. It's very well done. I don't know how much more they could do to it. I think the only reason I don't give it more is I think there might have been some scrubbing done to take out some of the grain. I'm not sure on that, but it all looks good. And some people might prefer that because sometimes that grain can be very distracting, even though it is film grain. I'm going to give the packaging 3.5. I think it could have been a lot better. They could have done more with it, but it's still pretty good. Anyway, if you've seen this film, which I'm sure you probably have, let me know your thoughts on it, and also the thoughts on the 4K transfer. And it is Halloween season. I suggest watching lots of more horror movies. And if you get a chance to, if you haven't done so already, if you like this video and subscribe to my page, I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.